Hello, this is Chats Over Coffee with My Yoga Teacher, a podcast where the comedian Peter Brush, that's me, speaks to his yoga teacher Kayla, who you'll hear in a second, and we have a hot drink and discuss hot topics like the philosophies of yoga that were written 3,000 years ago. I hope you've been enjoying the show. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, I'm at @PeterBrush_ and Kayla is at Kayla McCormack Yoga. So if you don't do that already, then you'll be our guests. Right, should we get on with it then? You know when people have twins, they either have like identical twins where it's like the one egg splits in the womb, is that right? And then
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and then or you have non-identical twins where two separate eggs have been fertilized in the womb. Right?
Yeah.
But two eggs don't usually get in the womb, do they?
No.
So do you think that sort of happens, like, have you ever been to a water park and you've got like a guy at the top of the slide that tells you when you're supposed to come down?
Yeah.
Do you think that the guy at the top of the fallopian tube just got the timings wrong with the...
He's just like, yep, you can go. Yep, you can go.
Yeah.
He's reading his book, not paying
exactly,
attention.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's alright, isn't it? I used to have peanut butter and jam sandwiches at university when I went for a spell of not really feeding myself properly, and I just, it'd be quite easy to just buy jam and peanut butter and just eat a loaf of bread like that.
Well, you can make it a little bit healthier if you want. You can obviously use good bread, and instead of jam, you can put fresh fruit, which sounds a bit weird, but if you use like strawberries or something like that, it actually does taste quite nice.
Okay.
It substitutes quite well.
Well...
There you go.
No,
recommendation from me.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'm not always a fan of everything from America being imported over here. You know, like culture wars and stuff. But I don't mind the peanut butter and jam coming over.
Don't like me, but don't mind the peanut butter.
You're as English as tea now, aren't you? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself half English, half American now, or you just, you've got dual citizenship, but do you consider yourself an Anglo-American, or do you?
Yeah. Well, I tend to only tell people I'm American unless they say, "Are you American?" Because I have been here a very, very long time. I'm within just a few years of being equally. So the time I've spent in America, I've spent here now. On the census, I put that I identify as British. To be honest, I feel quite split, and I don't really feel like I need to choose between the two per se.
But you fell in love with a guy, not a country, though, didn't you? Or first,
well,
initially.
I don't know. I would say that probably isn't 100% right.
Right.
Because when you like something, you tend to gear towards that. So I quite like the idea of coming to England and some of the English culture and stuff like that, and the idea that it's really old, with castles and the history and Romans and how old it was. I've always had planned to go to university and take a year in a foreign country. In England is what my aim was. So I kind of always was geared towards this. But I'd never been, and I wouldn't say I was I didn't fill my house with loads of red buses and telephone booths and things like that.
Bunting and the royal family paraphernalia and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't that crazy. But I did just kind of enjoy the stories and the history, and I liked the idea of coming and visiting. So when I met some English people, I made a point to try and stay in touch with them. So at the time, we used MSN chat. Online, in chat rooms. What?
Yeah, I remember that. I'm so embarrassed looking back at some of those names I would have used as there'd be Radiohead lyrics and stuff I would have used.
Oh, yeah.
It's something pathetic.
I still have my original email account from my very first email account.
I can't use mine because it was very rude.
Oh, was it?
I was applying for universities and they were like, no, you got to change this.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't get into Oxford.
Yep, dodgy email account. They just thought, "What's this nonsense? Delete."
Yeah, I didn't quite realise how rude it was when I something I'd overheard. Anyway, there's an air of mystique there,
but yeah. So I think yes, I came to England because I did fall for a guy, but I think maybe I fell for the guy because I was already interested in that kind of culture, possibly.
It didn't hurt, did it? I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's not disappointed. You like England, don't you, generally?
Yeah. I feel like culture-wise, it's like the opposite from the East Coast of America in terms of like north-south. So like in America, there's this idea that you go north to go to the big city, and you go north to get to like the fast-paced life, and you go, because New York City and DC and Baltimore, they're all north. And then South Carolina is like, oh, you go south to get into the country, to be slow, see y'all, have a nice day, y'all come back now, you're here, and all that kind of stuff. And then here, it's like the other way around. If you go north, it's like getting out into, more country, more close, more...
Scotland, I suppose, as well, is sort of
exactly.
More country. I always thought about it, actually, the UK being kind of the opposite to America in some ways, because they always talk in America about coastal elites, don't they? I feel like our coasts, you wouldn't say that. I don't want to be disparaging around coastal communities and stuff, but you wouldn't say that they were like Los Angeles and New York, would you?
Well, I'm going to say I lived in Fleetwood, which is just above Blackpool, for 8 years, and I would not call myself a coastal elite.
And nothing against those areas, which are still very nice.
But they're more like retirement areas and like old fishing villages and stuff, rather than like some sort of like elitist place to want to go. But I suppose that's because you tend, in England at least, we tend not to have very massive beaches, and they're not usually beautiful in terms of like for swimming or...
There's some good beaches in the UK, really. I mean, Wales has got some great beaches.
Yes, Wales, down towards Cornwall and all of that.
So those areas aren't flourishing areas financially, and there's still beautiful beaches. And, Scarborough's not a bad beach. And
so you're basically saying it should be elites at the seas, but
I think
they're not.
Now, I may be wrong, but two of my readings of why these areas don't have huge financial investment and they're not bustling hubs like it is because the transport infrastructure is very bad. They're doing comedy to places on the coast. You will not be able to get there on the train very easily or back. It's just you have to drive to all these places, and the roads to a lot of these places are rubbish. If you look at like East Anglia or something, the transport network in East Anglia is appalling, and it's all coast, and so these places don't get investments because new businesses don't start there. And the other thing that goes against it is that there's some wonderful bits of coastline in Norfolk, for example, as well. Like some great coastline there, but holidaying in the UK is comparatively expensive because all the budget airlines started. I don't know when, but basically. It gave you the option that if you lived in the north, or if you lived in Liverpool or something, you wanted to go for a holiday, you didn't have to go to Morecambe, or you could just get the plane to go to Spain instead. And so I think that contributed to these areas having less investment as well, because tourism also went down. So some coast areas are quite sad when you go there. There's just not a lot going on. And I mean, Blackpool's a bit different. But
I would say that's the same for Fleetwood, but not so much for Blackpool, because Blackpool's got its own culture.
It's got enough stuff there and there's an entertainment there's entertainment hubs in Blackpool, aren't there, I think. So the next one is Brahmacharya.
It's a ch sound.
I feel like I sound like a racist whenever I like try and repeat any of these Sanskrit names. So it's just, I feel like it sounds like whenever my grandmother tried to pronounce a foreign footballer's surname. It was like she deliberately, like, not even paying it, like, oh, well, they're foreign, so I won't even bother trying to learn that.
I'll just say it how I want to say it, or whatever.
Tennis players she'd get wrong. She used to say Djokovic for Djokovic.
Nice.
For example. And she even called Federer Frederer. It was like... stick a British name at the top of it just to,
It's Brahmacharya.
Okay, yeah, all right. So this really does sound hippie-ish, this one, doesn't it?
Well, do you not think it sounds like the opposite of hippie-ish, though? Because the idea of this one is celibacy, originally. That's like the very first thing you're going to find when you search Brahmacharya. And it is one of the ones that, like, Hindu and other religions really take on board as like something to actually because they have monks and nuns, and so that's one of the first things that you'll find when you search Brahmacharya is those connections there. But it is, as you said, one of the yamas. So in yoga, we tend to try to take it a little bit deeper and a lot less physical, if that makes sense, for celibacy. I've heard it described in multiple ways, but two main things is this idea between taking advantage or exhausting your sexual energy. So that could be over flirting and things like that and causing harm through that. And then the other thing is another thing of just being mindful of your energy as a whole. So a lot of people tend to translate that to mean just watching your energy. So not necessarily specifically related to sexual energy, but just, your energy as a whole and not exhausting yourself, not giving it away too much, not making sure you spend as much time as you need to for yourself. And obviously that will be different for different people, depending on if you're extroverted or introverted or, anything,
Well, I actually was messing about a bit when I said I didn't know celibacy was the first thing, really. I thought that was just like...
Oh, yeah. Celibacy.
Because I know Gandhi made himself have large spells of celibacy, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which is a bit questionable, because I think he was supposed to sleep in a bed naked with his nieces, just to make sure so they were an added temptation for him.
I didn't know that.
They were supposed to be an added temptation for him, so that he would be even more sort of celibate because he wasn't acting on that. It's great for them, isn't it? Oh, what, we have to sleep with Uncle Gandhi again, do we? It's a bit.
I do remember his wife saying, for the majority of their marriage, or maybe all of their marriage, he was celibate.
Lucky her.
I know, right?
Yeah,
But that comes back to the idea that obviously he had a bigger picture in mind.
But a lot of boxers do that as well. If a boxer's got a big fight, they're not supposed to
really
fool around before fights. Yeah, that's one of these things that they say.
I didn't know that.
You'd think I was good at fighting as growing up. but so yeah, that's what they say. I'm sure someone like Mike Tyson didn't abide by it and lost and said that was why or something. It might not have been Mike Tyson.
But someone famous.
Someone famous is I messed up, because I didn't. I don't know if that's if you're not allowed to do anything, or whether you can sort of by yourself is all right. You know what I mean? I don't know if the.
Well, I would
I've
say
never trained boxers, so.
Well, I had my yoga teacher who I first trained with. She went to India regularly, and she told me she met a fella who she said that he told her that he was a virgin. He was in his 20s, so not ridiculously old, but he also hadn't done anything else with them by himself, if you will.
It's not good for you though.
Which I would have. That was my first thought. I don't think that's good for you, but I mean, I'm not a doctor, and I don't. But I think that if you're trying to be thinking about it from a celibacy and energy side, they go hand in hand then. You can't do either. With or without help?
Okay.
How do we word that? I don't know.
Yeah, well, you get a lot of prostate problems, apparently.
I don't know. It doesn't sound very right for me. But all of this stems from a very old belief that does come from kind of the yoga side. Not older than yoga, but yoga was originally linked with religions and things, so it's kind of all been made together. But originally there was this idea that
I'm sure we don't have that many children listeners, so
okay. It was originally thought that the semen, so when it happens, is holy and is full of energy and vitality, and that it's obviously from your head down, it's going out. So a lot of poses and things were to be taken upside down to try to keep that in.
Right.
And try and keep that energy in, so that you're trying to lengthen your lifespan and things like that. And I think that is the same with the idea for celibacy, is to try and keep that in, that life force or whatever. But medically, these days, I would say that I've never heard of anything positive other than maybe some mental, meditation-y kind of positive effects of challenging yourself and things, but not physical, of not doing anything. And it kind of links towards menstruating. They say you shouldn't go upside down when you're menstruating. But that also is linked to energies and what's happening in your body rather than a physical reaction. So there was a very short time period where there was an idea or a thought that maybe being upside down while you were on your period was bad for the blood because it could go somewhere that it shouldn't be going. But that doesn't happen. That's not something that you actually have to worry about. So if you want to, you can go ahead and be upside down. But but there is the idea that your body is trying to flush and get rid of things. So and by going upside down, by being inverted, you're kind of doing the opposite. I think that's the kind of theory behind that side of kind of being celibate in that area. Is just about holding onto your energy and not letting it go out.
Right.
There's probably loads more to that as well. But that's not all linked to Brahmacharya though. But yeah,
it feels like a lot of that's been debunked now, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. I think that's why we tend to say that Brahmacharya is more about watching your own energy levels and paying attention to yourself and how you feel and not giving too much. You know, like for me, if you were to go to a yoga class and we're like, yeah, I'm going to go all in here. I'm going to push myself, do it. And then after class, you know, you sat on the couch, you feel all right, but you're a bit tired. And then 2 hours later, you're still tired. You've done too much. You know, if you're still feeling the effects physically of being tired from the class, I don't mean like delayed onset muscle soreness or something. I don't mean achiness. I mean actual tired, not wanting to move, feeling like, whew. If you still feel like that hours after class, you've overdone it. So I think like I would feel like that's more of how we could apply it into our physical practice in our daily, like in our lives.
Because I looked it up, and the first thing that came up wasn't about celibacy, but something about staying in contact with your soul or something like that, or bringing yourself back to the soul, your own soul, or something like that.
Your Brahma is your source, your life source. So it's about kind of like you're saying, coming back to source.
That's what sounded hippie-ish to me, like because it's quite that sounds quite abstract. It's not like, you know, don't, you know, touch anything, but it's like.
Well, I think I'm trying to think of a way to say this. So one of the things is that you have, like I think we've talked about this before, this idea of like, yes, you are an individual, but then there's a chance that perhaps when you die, you are no longer an individual. You join like a whole that contains you and individuals that are no longer individual anymore. So like a source. So like if you were to think of you as a drop of water and the source as the river, if you put that drop of water back in the river, it's no longer a drop of water. It no longer exists like that. So I think the idea there is that you're connecting with that source, which would be the source for your being, your soul, your consciousness, whatever you want to think about it as, and making that connection to know, I'm going to say like the bigger picture, right. You know, understanding that it doesn't matter, all things change, grow, die, all of that kind of thing. So maybe connecting with that source. Like right now you would think that right now we're a drop of water, but perhaps we came from something that isn't drops, and it's trying to connect back to that idea. What's the
evidence of that, though? I mean, that's a nice idea, but like, what?
I suppose the only evidence you could ever really put forward to that is just that energy and matter are one and the same. So everything will be energy at the end. Like if you were to speed yourself up, what is it? It's, you know, it's Einstein, you know, speed yourself up to 2 times the speed of light and you turn into energy, and then speed of light squared. And then you turn into energy and then boom, you no longer exist.
Right.
Or do you? Because you're energy. So you just only exist as energy, not as a physical thing. So I think that's the only thing that I would say is even slightly towards trying that idea.
We're going to latch onto that then, are we? So there's more evidence for that than heaven then.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
And speaking of that, though, actually, Buddhism and some of those sects of Buddhism is actually the only religion that doesn't clash with science. You'll always find something in other religions that clashes, even if it's only silly or probably a mistranslation or you're taking it too literally or something like that, fair enough. But you'll find things that clash, like the idea of flooding the whole planet all in one go or something like that. You'll always find something that just feels just that little bit off that we don't necessarily find in the records through, archaeology and stuff like that. But Buddhism doesn't. Buddhism doesn't clash with anything because there's nothing really to clash with.
That's one of the things that I first found quite appealing about it when I was growing up. And I'm not a Buddhist, but I think that it kind of resonated with some of the psychological ideas as well. I don't know if I really think that to live is to suffer and stuff like that, but I felt like some of the things within it made a little bit more sense to me than the ideas of original sin and all that kind of stuff.
Original sin, is that the Catholic side where they think babies are born full of sin?
Well, I thought it was just a general Christian sort of thing, because maybe babies aren't sinners, but the idea in Christianity is that we're all sinners, aren't we? Really, as soon as you start thinking and making decisions, then you are a sinner, aren't you? The 7 deadly sins. You'll have felt any of those have made.
Yeah.
And then you have to repent and stuff like that. And
when you had too many sweets in one go and you felt sick, gluttony.
Yeah, but I feel like that's just a natural part of mankind, though, to be envious and lustful and greedy at times or whatever. It's just I just think that is humanity, and that's not contradicting what the religion says, I suppose. But I sometimes wonder whether it was because when you're brought up with something, then that is what you rebel against as well, isn't it? So if you're brought up in a Christian saying, then other religions might look a little bit more appealing. It's like grass is always greener, isn't it? You can sort of think, Buddhism looks great, but if I was raised a Buddhist, I might be like, some of this is nonsense, isn't it? So if you see it over the fence, you just see the elements that are positive to it, or that you don't have in your side of it, and think, I wish I had that. But then if you had all of what they had, then you might not feel the same way. So I think a lot of us in the West kind of do that sometimes with Eastern philosophies, and potentially vice versa, because obviously in the East they do fetishize the West sometimes. So that's probably what's also going on. Yeah,
I think there's a bit of that idea of if you find yourself unsatisfied with what you grew up with, you'll find something completely different better, as long as it's very different in your mind or whatever.
I was saying it's probably just a fetishized image of Buddhism that I would have had in my head.
Oh yeah, there's some really horrible sects of Buddhism if you look for them.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they've been involved in wars as well at some point. So the Dalai Lama seems all right, but how much of that's PR? You might be. You never really know with these celebrities, do you? What they're really like. He eats meat as well, so.
Does he?
Yeah, because he's. It might not be meat, it might just be fish, but he definitely eats some flesh because he's got some condition or something where he needs to have it, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I did read that somewhere. I think I only read it on Wikipedia. I tend to trust Wikipedia, even though obviously bogus information gets put on there, but I've read it more than once.
He's actually a proper diva. The cameras go off and he stops his namaste and he goes, "Where the hell's my fish?"
Yeah, well that is, there's a load of that, isn't there? Right.
But I think there are certain sects of Buddhism where they're not vegetarian, and I think we've mentioned this before. Where you're not supposed to decline food. So if someone gives you food and it's meat, you're not supposed to say no, thank you, I'm a vegetarian. You're supposed to eat it.
Obviously, you don't eat meat. I don't eat meat. Doesn't matter what the listeners, if they eat meat, they're not judging or anything. But obviously, they're investing in clean meat, aren't they, as time goes on, where they're going to try and grow meat in laboratories, which will mean
I saw that.
The carbon...
People eating that burger. Did they make a burger out of it?
Yeah, so it'd be actual meat, but no animals will have died for it, and the carbon footprint is a lot lower. And if you just had meat that was produced in that way, you wouldn't have things like... Apparently 70% of the antibiotics used in the world are used on farm animals.
Yes.
Which is mental. It's not that we're not sleepwalking into a crisis there, are we? So.
Oh, we most definitely are. People already. A woman has died in the UK from having a bladder infection that was untreatable because it was antibiotic resistant.
We'll be seeing more of that.
But anyway, yes. So agreed.
So they're going to have this, what they all term clean or ethical meat grown in laboratories and stuff, which will be meat, but it won't have all of the connotations of like. So basically, do you think if they were to do that, and that was basically how you got your meat, would you start eating meat again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to double check that. Well, people greenwash. So I'm a big believer in paying attention, because people greenwash everything all the time. I mean, just take Tesco. They're a massive, horrible corporation that say like, "Oh, every little bit counts."
That's a sponsorship we can't get now.
Yeah, well, good luck. You can have Tesco. I don't want it.
Right,
okay. But I mean, like, some of these really large corporations are, try to say that they're trying to be good when they aren't really. They're just greenwashing. So assuming that there is no actual issue with it and what they're saying is true, like it really doesn't use more carbon or or whatever to make these fake real burgers.
Whatever they are.
Or whatever. Whatever.
Synthetic burgers, whatever it is.
Yeah. I would have no problems eating that.
Yeah.
But like, doesn't that creep you out a little bit? What if they decide to make like human burgers?
No, they do that.
Yeah, they won't, but they could, couldn't they? And you don't know what you're eating. You're assuming it's a burger. I have to see how much I trust these weird, creepy companies that are growing this meat.
So yeah, but maybe you would have to gain confidence in the product, wouldn't you? That you were eating what it said it was. But I'm sure that there'd be regulatory standards and stuff.
Yeah.
I was saying I don't have a problem with it. I can't wait. But I think there's a psychological sort of thing as to like that it'd be weird to be eating meat again after decades of not doing it. That would be quite strange for people. And so
I knew some people. I knew a woman who wouldn't even eat corn because she said it was too meaty, too realistic. That's not the reason why I don't eat meat, so that wouldn't bother me. But I could see why someone would be bothered by that. If because if you like, actually, I watched a show. I watched Inside Number 9 the other night.
The people love that, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, most of them are really good. But in the show, he takes a slice off a woman's buttock and he fries it in a pan and he makes this guy eat it. So it's horrible because that's how they write their stories anyway, most of the time. But while you're watching, the majority of people, I think, would feel the same. A bit of a gag reflex. Like, it's gross. It's not just, like, horrific. It's also a bit like, And I think that there are a lot of people, even if we're not one of them, that feel that same way towards the idea of eating animal flesh. Like, it's revolting, So then the idea of a lab-grown meat, it doesn't matter where it came from. It doesn't matter that no animal was actually hurt in the process of making the meat. That idea is gross, just like the idea of growing human flesh to be consumed. Like that idea of taking some of my cells and then growing a Kayla burger or something weird. It's a bit gross. So I can see why someone like definitely would not like that. I could understand that. And to be honest, I fluctuate. Sometimes I get really grossed out by meat, especially after something like that, when I see it on a human perspective. And it kind of wakes you up a little bit, and you go, "Yeah, why do we eat meat? That's a bit gross, isn't it?"
Well, I don't know because I mean, maybe it's not the case of everyone. Obviously, it weirds some people out. Maybe it's sort of always weirded some people out. But I think there's like someone I used to work with. They said that it's natural for human beings to salivate if they see meat, and I think it is because if you see like a slab of steak or something, I think you do naturally salivate. Even if you ethically are against it and stuff, there's just a natural human reaction is to just salivate a bit and then go, "Oh, I'm not supposed to endorse this,"
Raw meat or cooked meat?
Raw meat, I think, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Raw meat's always put me off.
Okay.
Maybe that's just me. I think there is some sort of, like you're saying, scientific, this idea that we're going to be eating or whatever, and meat is one of the things that we've been eating for, forever. We used to be hunter-gatherers, and one of the hunter-gatherers part is the hunting. So, like, maybe there is something a bit built in there.
I'm reading Sapiens at the moment, which I can't believe I hadn't read before. Have you read that?
No, but I've seen it.
And there's just a bit in it where it sort of talks about how culturally we've sort of evolved so fast in the last couple of thousand years that it completely outlives the animal brain. Like, so we still do things like want to gorge on fat and sugar because obviously when we were in hunter-gatherer societies, if we came across anything particularly fatty or sugary, we would gorge on it because it was hardly, it was not very often that would naturally occur. So,
especially sugary, like berries and stuff. You just want to stuff your face.
And we still have that in our brain because we haven't, because we've not evolved our brains to catch up with what, whatever reality we're in now. So I guess that's the same with meat, isn't it? Meat is a natural thing that we would naturally eat, wouldn't we? The only reason not to eat it is an ethical thing, really. Yeah,
whether that's ethical in terms of animal welfare or ethical in terms of all the environmental impact it has, it doesn't really matter. It's still like a choice thing rather than a biological thing. But I feel like that's a lot of energy to be putting into something for a very small get back. Like loads of people nowadays are doing they're doing the reels, they're doing 10 tips for this, and it's like, well, I have content. I know I could just start doing it, but I feel like that is a lot of energy. Like I would rather, it took me almost all day yesterday to write the detailed plan for my workshop tonight. So I would rather my energy go into what I'm actually giving people than to something free online. I'm not saying that free is everything, but something that's just short online that just, how much attention is it really going to get? Maybe someone will watch it, but are they going to do it? Are they going to, I'm not saying that it's not got its benefits, but like you're saying, it's just, you start questioning, is that worth it? Do I want that out there? Is it going to clash with something when I change my mind later?
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, it's not.
So
when something's out, it's a public record of what you're, maybe shouldn't be so quick to always put stuff out, but,
And I do think as a little bit of an introvert, I feel I can communicate better when I communicate in writing. Not every time, not all the time, not constantly, but I do think that, especially if it's something a little bit technical, I feel like I can communicate that well in writing. But then that means people have to read it. I mean, my mom told me that I have too much text. I need to have less reading. And I just said, well, I just want students that want to read.
Yeah, I say that sort of thing as well. I write a lot of jokes that aren't big belly laugh jokes, especially in Edinburgh and stuff like that. They're just subtle sort of things that I think are interesting, but they don't always massively laugh out loud. And someone's like, "Oh, well, it's not laughing out loud." I'm like, "Well, it's not supposed to be."
Yeah, it's just supposed to make you go,
It's supposed to get a muted reaction. Thank you. So I just got an email. Right, I applied for some gig. When you get the reply, you think, "Oh, cool, I've got the gig." And someone's replied and said, "Thanks for replying. You have not got the gig." Why tell me that?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's quite nice. I'd rather know for certain rather than stick around waiting.
And you don't stick around waiting because hundreds of comics apply for one spot. So that you're probably not going to get it. So you get quite hardened to rejection. You don't need to get your hopes up very slightly and think, "Oh, he's replied. Oh, it's just to tell me I definitely shouldn't have got my hopes up."
Maybe he's not used to the net.
He does. He runs enough stuff. Sorry.
Anyway, shall we leave it there then?
I'll definitely go now. Sorry.
Okay then.
I keep going on a tangent. You're like, "Should we go?" And I'll tell you what. Let's just talk about nothing for another 5 minutes.
Right. I will talk to you later then.
Yeah, just get it off now.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening, everyone. You made it to the end. Congratulations. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll hopefully see you in a couple of weeks if you have not decided that this is no longer for you. As ever, if you like the show, obviously it's a free show. But if you want to pay us back somehow, then you can always tell your friends and family and work colleagues or anyone you think would be interested. We would love more people to find out about it. So that would be great if you want to do that. I'm not going to stress the point because it doesn't sound desperate, but it is very, very helpful. And it's nearly Christmas, isn't it? So it's not, is it? But you might be listening to this around Christmas because they don't expire, do they? So this is just waffle now, isn't it? Yeah, let's just go. See you soon.